My name is Steve Piskor, and I've been advocating for elderly abuse for about 15 years now. About 10 years ago, my mother was brutally abused in a nursing home. I placed a hidden camera in her room and caught 8 aides abusing her. My mother's story of the abuse went worldwide. Every major media all over the world covered the story. And after that, I began to advocate to get laws changed to keep these elderly people safe. In 2019, I got Ohio legislators to introduce bills in both the House and the Senate for electronic monitoring in nursing homes. The bill was named Esther's Law after my mother. The legislation is not a mandatory law, it's elective law. If you want a camera in a nursing home, you can put one in. If you want to keep your privacy rights, just simply don't put a camera in. This legislation will allow roommates to make an agreement if they want a camera. If one doesn't want a camera, the other one still can have one just by simply pointing the camera away from the other resident. And they can make arrangements on whatever conditions they want to do it. If they want to shut the sound off, I mean, that's okay. Hidden cameras don't have sound. This camera is not hidden. It'll be out in the plain view. Esthers Law, Senate Bill 58, was unanimously passed in the Senate House Committee. It unanimously passed in the Senate. It unanimously passed in the House Committee. It is now headed to the House for a vote where it is expected to pass, and the governor is expected to sign it. It takes, after the governor signs it, it takes 90 days for the law to go into effect. There have been some misinformation being told about this legislation and some bad and misinformation that is being reported. Some people say, well, the legislation doesn't say anything about a sign, and the legislation does say about a sign. The sign is clearly in the legislation. And what I don't understand from these people is that if you want to put a sign in a room, I mean, put a sign in a room. You're allowed to put a sign in your loved one's room, but it can only be on your loved one's side. And put it on a bulletin board or put a chalkboard up there or something, or put a picture frame with a sign in it and say there's a camera in a room. That should satisfy you. I mean, what more do you want from this? I mean, I don't understand that you don't understand this idea. The nursing home is not required to put a sign up. They probably will, but we can't mandate a nursing home to put a sign up. It's not our facility to do that, to mandate it. It's their facility. You can't put a sign in their facility. You can put a sign in your mother's or your father or your loved one's room, but you can't put a sign outside of that. So if you want to put a sign up, do like I did. I put a sign up in my mother's room saying that I had a hidden camera in the room. And I have pictures of it, and I will I will show you the pictures of it. The sign is very immaterial. The camera is the more important thing, and I just don't understand what part of this that you don't understand about a sign, or why even make an issue about a sign when the camera is the most important issue here. We're doing groundbreaking legislation in Ohio to put cameras in nursing homes. Another issue they don't understand is that the legislation says if the nursing home makes out a form, then the guardian or the resident must fill out the form. So what's going to happen is the nursing home, if they make out a form, the nursing home's going to give you the form, and what you're going to do is you're going to fill the form out. But if the nursing home doesn't make a form out, then you don't have a form to sign. Very simple language. What part of that do you don't understand? I don't know. We can't make it any easier for you to understand something that easy. I mean, the form is laid out in the legislation. It tells you how the form is to be. If you guys were to take a second out to do some investigating on this legislation, you would have found out that there were 2 amendments made to this legislation. One was made by the Ohio Attorney General. The Ohio Attorney General wanted the legislation, which already is a law for them, but they wanted the legislation to point to a law that says lawmakers are still allowed to use surveillance in their investigations. And that's basically what they put into Esther's Law, which was just basically a regulatory law it's already there. I mean, it's just a procedural thing. The Second Amendment was, there was a change from the word shall to may, which there was a big issue on shall and may because nobody, I guess, well, everybody understood it, but there was only a few people that didn't understand the difference between shall and may. And who made the change from shall to may was the Department of Health. The Department of Health made a change saying that the legislation originally said they shall make rules up as needed in accordance with Esther's Law. They made the change out of it to make it not mandatory that they make it. They changed it from shall to they may make it. And they do this because there is a law, and I don't know if it's a law or a rule that the Department of Health has, that it stops legislatures from making too much legislation that mandates them to do all this work. So that's why the law was changed. That's why the form is not in the Department of Health. They didn't want it there. They cited their law or their rule that they don't have to make this. They'll do it if you change it to may. Change the word shall to may, and that's the explanation that we got from everybody. Now, by chance, if there is no form to fill out, the legislation does give you a guide of what you are to do to put a camera in there. I mean, just because a nursing home doesn't make a form, there's nowhere in this legislation that says just because they don't make a form doesn't allow you to put a camera in there. That is false. Whoever's making this story up is wrong. And I don't know what you're reading. But this is a law, and the law must be followed just like you follow laws every day. The Department of Health is the governing agency, not only on this legislation, but in nursing homes. So if problems do arise, they may make rules to solve the problems. It's very simple legislation, very simple language. I mean, that's why legislation is there. That's why this stuff isn't spelled out step by step by step. No legislation is spelled out step by step. And if there's states that have step by step instructions on this legislation, then that's what you're limited to. You're only limited to that step by step instructions. Most laws are written with ambiguity in it so that there can be changes made without taking it back to the legislatures to make the changes. The Department of Health has the authority to make some rules up. As long as they don't change the law, they can make rules up. They can make rules up saying the form has to be done, whatever's decided to do. That's what they could do. I mean, they can put time limits on whatever they want to do. I mean, they don't have to. There's no reason to. But if the problems arise, that's what will happen. That's why we put in there that they may make rules up. Now, what part of that you don't understand, we don't understand what part of that you don't understand. Every state has different laws. There's around 30 states, I believe somewhere around 30 states that have one-party consent laws and concerns to eavesdropping laws. There's a few states that don't allow recording, audio recording in their states. So cameras in their states, you wouldn't be able to use audio recording. There's some states that don't allow cameras at all in the nursing homes or any long-term care facilities, and that includes your own camera. You can take pictures of your loved one, but you can't take pictures of anything else. It's against the law to do it. This legislation for cameras in nursing homes and long-term care facilities right now is in about 12 states. There are 6 states that are exactly like Ohio's. They're for nursing homes only. There were 8 states Some laws were amended. There was a question on the use of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi in nursing homes is basically free to the residents. So, I mean, free Wi-Fi would include the use of the camera. There was an agency that said, well, the Wi-Fi isn't strong enough to accommodate so many cameras. I mean, I don't know where this agency gets their information from, because she's looking at the Wi-Fi at home. Wi-Fi at home, your home Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi in a business is entirely different. As a matter of fact, when you call for Wi-Fi service, the first thing they ask you is this a business or a home? Wi-Fi in a business, I mean, you can go into a hospital where there's hundreds of people, and it accommodates hundreds of people using Wi-Fi. In airports, I mean, there's thousands of people, and bigger organizations, big firms, I mean, there's Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is used by a lot of people. Business Wi-Fi is much, much different than your home Wi-Fi. Your home Wi-Fi will accommodate, depending on your speed, may accommodate up to 10 to 12 devices. A business Wi-Fi can accommodate up to between 100 and 1,000 or even more, depending on the Wi-Fi situation. Wi-Fi in this situation is something that you need for the cameras to work in order for you to view the cameras remotely. If the nursing home, if there's problems with Wi-Fi, with the nursing home Wi-Fi, then you're going to have to get your own Wi-Fi. I did make some calls to AT&T and Spectrum, and both had different views on it. One, AT&T said, yes, you can't put Wi-Fi in separate rooms, and Spectrum said it depends on the Wi-Fi service that the nursing home already has, if it could be expanded to separate rooms. If there's the third option on this is probably the easiest one, and it's the one that everybody uses for the use of hidden cameras. No hidden camera has Wi-Fi. My hidden cameras didn't have Wi-Fi. And what you did was you had to go switch out the SD card, and it recorded directly on the SD card. So you went and you switched the SD cards out, and you took it home and downloaded it on your computer or onto your laptop, and you viewed the videos on it. And you did it every day, every 2 days. I mean, you have to go to the nursing home to do it. And even with the camera with Wi-Fi, watching these videos for an entire day is time consuming. I mean, if you're going to look through the whole video to see what happened to your loved one for that entire day, it is very time consuming to do. It's not an easy process out of it. So, I mean, the third option is the cheapest option. And if all else fails, I mean, that's the option that you would go to. But today, the technology is changing fast. I mean, today, when COVID started, I mean, there was apps that were popping up like Zoom and these other apps that were allowing people to use conference calls on, and you didn't even have to. Of course, you needed a phone that had data service on it, but it's being used widely today. It's being expanded. Facebook just came out with their own camera that does the exact same thing. You can use Facebook Live, you can use Zoom, and I'm not sure how the camera would work in a nursing home, but there's options out there that are happening, and the law is changing so fast. Facebook just recently changed their name, then they're changing their procedures on their other services that they have, social media that they have, which is going to be geared more towards that, which is video conferencing and going and moving into that direction. And the technology that's going to happen sooner or later is going to happen where it's going to be much easier for you to do. I mean, if you can use a Zoom in a nursing home, I mean, it eliminates you from accessing their Wi-Fi, where you can just access an app. So there's a lot of options to do. I mean, somebody told me that you can buy a phone and put it into the room, and the phone can act as a hotspot to the camera. There's a process that has to be done with it. I'm not sure how that's done, but there are other options to do on Wi-Fi, and that's why the legislation does not limit you to Wi-Fi services. Does not say that you have to use Wi-Fi, because if you have to use Wi-Fi, you're limited to Wi-Fi only, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to limit this law at all. This law is spelled out. We can make changes to it. There's a lot that can be done to expand it. Later on as the law gets implemented and it starts going, maybe sometime later next year, we can look at adding group homes to it, developmental disability homes to it, assisted living facilities. I mean, there's a lot of places. If you just watch the news, recently there was an adult care facility, disability facility, where an adult that was disabled was being hit, abused. I mean, if we have them in daycares, why aren't they in them facilities? So laws need to be changed in all facilities, not just assisted living facilities. I mean, the laws will be changed. This legislation is being looked at as a door opener by Ohio legislators, and everybody's saying it. Take a look at Susan Manchester's Facebook page and see what she says about this legislation. Every legislature is saying the same thing in Ohio, and they're looking at even more laws, and I'm looking forward to working with these legislators on new laws. There's actually a new law that has been implemented in 3 states already, and I'm going to try to get Ohio to look at this new law, this new legislation, and I'll tell you about the legislation later on after we look at it and have legislators look at it, and I'll tell you what it is. But it's a great law. It's a law that's going to solve a lot of problems. I mean, this is the way it works. There's no fast way to do this. There's no miracle way to change anything. I mean, this has been happening for years and years and years, and we're finally making ways to stop it. So the people that don't embrace this law, we don't understand why. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people. Just look at the comments on the media stories that I did. There's thousands of comments. We got thousands of comments from supporters all over the state of Ohio. Legislators from their districts were getting support from all over Ohio for this legislation. And why some people chose not to support it, we don't understand it. I mean, this is what happens. It happens. Actually, your opposition to it actually helped pass the law because it opened up their eyes even more. So better things are coming for this, and it's going to happen. It's going to change. Like I say, it doesn't happen overnight. Esther's Law is not going to happen overnight. Once it's passed, it's going to take 90 days for it to go into effect, and the 90 days is for everybody to get ready to use this law, for nursing homes to get ready for it, for everybody to get ready for it. So things are going to change, and I'm going to be a part of that change even more. And if you're still going to oppose everything and that's going to be changed, that's up to you. But we are making a difference, and this is not the end. This is the beginning.